Namaskar and welcome to this exciting show, Sattology Debunking Mythology. Today we have chosen a topic which is very, very interesting and elephant with four heads, four tusked, sorry, not heads, tusks, four tusked elephants. When did they exist and what is their connection with Ramayana? And so we have a very popular personality, historian, and also a researcher with us and a very good friend, Shri Nilesh Oak. So let us welcome him. Namaskar, Nilesh.
Namaskar, Aditya ji.
Namaskar. So, this is a enigma. Like people show in Hollywood stories, Hollywood movies, four-tusked elephants, and somehow it's just like the unicorn. Everyone is searching for the unicorn, and we know Ashwamedh Yagya can be called a unicorn sometimes. But this four-tusked elephant is something a bigger enigma in terms of, but it has got a lot of references in our scriptures, at least on histories. So where do we start? When did they exist, or did they exist on the earth? And what are the proofs? I think some archaeological proofs are already there.
Yes. All right. But before, before the archaeological proofs became available, and there might be some remote proofs that might have become available, say, a few hundred years ago, possibly after like Darwin became famous. People really got excited and started exploring for things. But still, it was not. Most of the people were not aware of these creatures, but especially what they call quaternary extinctions, that happened specifically around 11,000 BC. And many different species of animals, something that they don't exist anymore, they disappeared from the surface of the earth. Now, when I say they disappeared, because suddenly there was a change in weather patterns around that 11,000 BCE, that what we call the Younger Dryas. And that's what destroyed our knowledge of many of these species. So these four-tusked elephants falls into that. But we will see the connection of that as to how long they existed. Now we have approximate dates, but a very specific connection with the Ramayana, but also a very specific connection with the dating of Ramayana, because that evidence is used in both ways, in the wrong way and a right way. So we will talk about those both.
No, I think this four-tusk pachyderm, that's how they call it, pachydermology and all these things. There are scholars in just researching on elephants. I think many of them, I studied one German report, they agreed that these four-tusked elephants may have existed. And the colors also. The white elephant we can still even see today. One or two pictures I've seen. So the white elephants can exist, and I've also seen one colored elephant looking bluish, almost bluish, also in real life existing. So,
Right.
so I think we can also assume that these might have existed, but we need to still discuss it.
Right.
And see
And
where that happened actually. Yes, go
correct.
ahead.
And before even we go to Ramayana, I mean, you'll be expert on that. But there is, of course, in Indian ancient narratives, this Airavat of Indra.
Indra. That's right.
Yeah, and he is described with what, 6 trunks and something like that, right?
Yeah.
Now, whether such a creature existed or not, it's a different issue, but no reason to doubt that it might have existed.
Yeah.
That's one thing. By the way, Airavat, in Ramayana, we have 5 different varieties of elephants, and one of the, I don't remember the other 4, but one of the variety of elephants is described as Airavat. Okay, just like in horses, there is Arabian horse, and there is a Shivalik Indian horse, and then there is a steppe Central Asian horse, then of course the North American horses. So anyway, so let's get into the four-tusked elephant. And so if I can share, so I want to start with the quickly the genetic sort of archaeological evidence for around the world, and in the context of Ravana, So let's see. Tell me if you can see the slide.
Yeah, we can see the screen.
You see it? Okay. So I want to start with this slide to simply show, because people wonder, people think, oh, well, if you go back thousands and thousands of years ago, there were no human beings. or there were no human beings around the world, maybe only in Africa. Well, that's, that's a very, what you call, very stale knowledge. Now we know, and that's why I'm showing you this particular map, that North America and South America were populated with human beings for a very long time.
Very
Okay.
long time.
Yeah. In fact, until very recently, many of the mainstream academia would even fight and challenge the existence of human beings in North America, like in 13,000 BC, like a Clovis man, and they would say, well, but that's just a very little evidence. Well, forget that. There is much more evidence that goes back into deep antiquity. But just for our four-tusked elephant, all I want to show you is that purely from a genetics. Now, this is a paper from Harvard, the genetics paper, Reich and his colleagues. Uh, what you're seeing here, that red color. Now, remember, this is a signal that is very, very old, and therefore it's a weak signal, but it's a statistically significant signal. And what it is showing is that there is a evidence of migration from people. Now, when I say migration, of course they migrated from India, but there was a communication that's why these evidence has stayed through the records across this geography. From India, like Onge, from Caribbeans and not Caribbeans, from Andaman, Nicobar Islands, all the way through parts of Australia, through parts of Asia, like Indonesia, through Polynesia, all the way to South America. And this goes back very, very long time. Okay, for example, if you look at the South American continents and some of the locations that have been archaeologically excavated, like Monteverde in Chile, the evidence goes back like to 33,000 BCE. And very recently in this central part, like, the Panama, I came across evidence that shows existence of human habitation going back to like for 50,000 BC. Now, why I'm showing you that is because once someone is comfortable with this information, they're not going to get stuck, and they're not going to just get stuck with the fact, how can Ramayana be in 12,000 and talking about Ravana going around the world 14,000 years ago? Well, that's 14,000 is like a piece of cake, that the timing of Ramayana, 12,209 BC. Sugriva, we will do this, Aditya, some other time. Like, Sugriva describes the geography and milepost all the way starting from India, all the way going eastward through current modern Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Polynesia, whatnot, all the way to the coast of Peru and Chile. Okay. And so that evidence exists. We'll talk about that some other time. But the reason I wanted to start with this genetic evidence is to show you where Ravana had gone. So our Uttarakanda of Valmiki Ramayana, it describes Ravana going around the world and conquering places. Okay. Now, some of the information we don't have all the details, so that I'm showing you with those dotted lines. So Lanka somewhere there. From that, we have conjectural evidence, I would say, to assert that Ravana would have conquered the parts of Africa. Now, some of the I'm not saying that is the evidence, but just from the purely name perspective, Rama's mother side, if you look at some of the names, these names are Somali and Mali. And, think of places like Somalia and Mali. These are there in Africa. Now, I'm not saying that's the evidence. In fact, something very interesting, when the origin of river Nile was found, and they wanted to go trace the origin of Nile, and that time, this is going back, say 100 years, close to 100 years, 150 years. It wasn't very easy to navigate and travel around in Africa. And the British team members who went in search of the origin of the Nile, like where the Nile began, just like our Gangotri and Yamunotri equivalent, this person has written, they had taken maps from India, and the area there is called a Soma Parvata. So there are these references. So India had these maps of the interiors of Africa. So I'm saying this tradition is very, very old. But so Ravana might have gone to Africa. We have enough evidence to say whether he went directly or not. He might have gone via Antarctica. but Ravana had definitely gone all the way to Patal. We see many descriptions of it, and Patal referring to South America. Definitely, Ravana had his influence all the way to central India. We know that. We know from Valmiki Ramayana that he had gone to Himalayas. He had gone further north to Himalayas. He then when then in the Uttarakhand again, we have a descriptions of Ravana going around the world all the way to Yamapuri. The last time when we discussed Ravana's Lanka, we discussed the name for Antarctica. That is the Yamapuri. And more than likely, he went from there to South America. He had also gone further north. He had also gone in the eastern direction and so on. Okay. And also gone around India. The reason I mentioned that is this is the context that is very important for our four-tusked elephants. Okay. So let me quickly, do you want me to take a break and you want to ask something and then I share the four-tusked elephant, or I can continue?
It's very interesting because even Ramanujacharya, who is considered a incarnation of Lakshman, also mentioned that, and also many other scholars like I can quote Bilva Mangal Thakur and other people who have quoted that Ravan got his gold from Brazil, somewhere there.
Brilliant. Okay.
So
Yes.
so these acharyas may not have done extensive research on this science, but they had the information and they must be quoting previous acharya.
Correct.
And the acharyas generally don't do that much research. They just depend on the previous acharya.
Correct.
This must
because
have
their
coming
focus is
down the
different.
parampara.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because their focus is different, right? I mean,
Correct.
no, and that's a great point. So in fact, in that connection also, let me mention something since we are on this map, that just going from India eastward, see what we call the area of Thailand was considered like, you might know the name Kanchanburi, that in Thailand, the Bangkok, the area of Bangkok is called Kanchanburi and whatnot, which is a gold puri, Puri became Buri there. So Kanchanpuri, and then the place was also called Suvarna Dvipa and Raupya Dvipa and Yavadvipa, which is our Java. The reason I'm mentioning in other talk, and we will do this when we do the four directions of Sugriva and the Sugriva's Atlas some other time.
Yeah.
But the gold from, I have research papers going back, tracing to at least 2000 years, meaning 2000 years ago from today, that the gold coming from specific area was known by that area. Just like you said, this Swamiji, Bilva Mangal Thakur, you said, right, before, yeah. Bilva Mangal, he said gold coming from Brazil. So I'm saying this gold, they called by specific name. So they called it, for example, Suvarna Dvipa Kanana, or whatever, Kanaka, whatever the word for gold they use. Suvarna, so it's a gold coming from certain place. Similarly, if you notice, say Tibetan, in Tibetan, what you call Lhasa or some area where the what you call their temples are coated with a gold type of color, or whole Buddha statues are plated with a gold color.
Totally.
Nowadays they use gold and different whatnot. But in Ramayana and many other narratives, you hear the word Jambu Nada. I don't know if you're familiar. That is,
yes, Jamuna, yes.
As a gold, as a certain gold went by that name wherever it was found, wherever the Jambu Nad was. Similarly, that you mentioned Brazil, so I'll quickly mention. In Rigveda, or in Vedas, you will, I don't remember which one, I have the reference, where the gold is referred to by the name Parujam.
Parujam.
And you know why?
No.
Coming from Peru.
Oh.
So when I read that, the first question was, okay, is the Peru name given by the Spanish people when they came there, or it was the name there in some form, before? And so I have friends from Peru, someone who are pretty, good with the history. And actually I asked them, I said, hey, is this does this anything mean in Spanish to begin with? And is it the name given by Spanish people who came there to conquer and kill the locals, whatnot? Or is it some local? And actually it is an ancient name, So Parujam. And when I find the reference, I will definitely share with you. Very, very fascinating. It is the type of gold. It's called Parujam and it comes in the Vedas. Okay. But so you see that Ravana is going all over. Okay. Not that he necessarily need to go for explaining the four-tusked elephant, but I just wanted to explain the whole swath of his expansion regime and wherever he had traveled. Okay, so with that, let's see if we can talk about the four-tusked elephant. In fact, see again, this evidence was used in both way, Aditya ji. I mean, this is a typical style of Western Indologies, right? Just like a Pushpak Viman or the one Arundhati Vasishta observation that I discussed, or we will discuss some other time
Yeah.
from Mahabharata. You know what they did? Because astronomically they felt that it cannot be shown Arundhati walking ahead of Vasishta,
Correct.
they were using that observation to show how Mahabharata evidence cannot be trusted, or how you cannot trust Mahabharata as a
Yeah.
grantha. Same thing they did. I mean, when I'm saying Western Indologists, not to just blame them purely, because they are sometimes reforming, but their lackeys in India do not want to reform. Okay,
Mm.
so many times this evidence, this description of a four-tusked elephant was used to say, look, Ramayana has all kinds of things that are simply not true. Okay, they are myths. That's how it was used. So, for example, this is before the four-tusked elephants were identified. So here, this is a verse from the what you call Sundarkand of Valmiki Ramayana. Hanuman is in Lanka now, and Hanuman is going through Lanka, like walking through the city of Lanka, looking for Sita. And so what he finds there is that he finds the palace of Ravan, that is Uttamam Rakshasa Vasam. You know, that is the palace of Ravana. Hanuman is observing it. And there, if you look at the last two lines there, you know, Chatur Visharana, you know, so that is referring to that four-tusked elephant, okay, or four-tusked elephant-like creatures, you can say, and that's perfectly fine. And they were guarding and protecting the Pushpak Viman and the palace. That's what the description comes. And then people objected, saying, you know, so this is a quick translation. Searching the excellent residences of important Rakshasas, Hanuman finally reached the palace of the Ravana, guarded by armed Rakshasas with elephants. And it says with two, which is not a surprise, we know them, but with a 3 and 4 tusks. Now, I have actually a picture of somewhere, not today here, of a 3-tusked elephant, but it from our times, but it looks like maybe a genetic aberration or something like this. Not many frequent. But what about this 4-tusked elephant? And as you are already aware, so I won't take time there. But what now we know, especially from quaternary extinction studies, especially the studies that are done around the world, especially when they were studying the extinction of living species around 11,000 BC, that a younger Dryas was a significant something happened on the earth, and there was a lot of extinction. So that is when this became a news. Okay, and so when they found, I'm going to show you where they found. Okay, so they found it actually everywhere. Okay, so they found, if you look at this map of the world, wherever you see some sign, whether it's a circle, mark, cross, everywhere, these Gompothere, they will go by some different names depending on where they were found and how they were named. But you can see here Gompotherium, you know. Yeah, they were found where? They were found everywhere. So North and East Africa, South Asia, China, Europe, and North America. Okay, and many other species also had multiple tusks, more than 2. So they were found everywhere, and so now we know that they existed. They also Ravana existed. Now, before just one big problem here that people confuse, and here we cannot blame Western Indologists, okay, because Western Indologists, Aditya ji, are stuck in 500 BC, 200 BC for Ramayana. Okay, so that is a big problem, but at least they are not taking this too far back. Now, what we find on some of our what you can say, people who just take something on the emotion, they take this data and then do you know what they say, which is a fact, by the way, is that this Gompothere did exist for a long time on the earth. So the estimated times based on modern scientific studies show that they possibly existed as early as 9 million years ago, or 10 million years ago, 13 million years ago, something like this. Now, immediately you will find this in a social media, like a clickbait news, where people will take this fact that the 4-tusked elephants existed 9 million years ago and immediately jump and say, oh, therefore Ramayana happened 9 million years ago. And they feel happy about it. Now, that is a problem. Okay, because now I'm not saying that Ramayana wouldn't have happened that long ago. I have nothing like that. This is a good evidence. But now we still have to look at the Valmiki Ramayana evidence to see if it matches for 9 million, and it doesn't. There is a lot more evidence that says it cannot be before certain time. Like cannot be. I think we discussed that last time, or I don't know.
Exactly.
In Saraswati evidence we discussed
Saraswati,
that.
we
Yeah.
discussed that.
Yes.
Yes.
After 50,000, it has to be after 50,000 BC. It has to be after 15,000 BC because of Sattology and whatnot, right? So just because you find four-tusked elephant, you cannot go to 9 million. But now that creates another problem. Now people say, okay, so maybe they existed 9 million years ago. But what about, did they exist when what I am claiming Ramayana happened, like 14,000 years ago? And that's where I wanted to just show this news, and then we can stop and we can discuss other things. All these fossils that they found, especially when they were researching on this younger Dryas animal extinctions, they found this Gompothere and similar type of these elephant-like creatures with multiple tusks, more than 2, 3, and 4, and whatnot. They found all around the world. That's one. And the timing, when you date those fossils, actually those timings come to as recent as 11,000 BP before present, meaning like 9,000 BCE and before. So we do find fossils of Gompothere and other similar four-tusked elephant-like creatures up to 9,000 BC, and the 12,000 BC, that date I'm saying, is definitely falls into that. So
this is a recent phenomena. It's not very long back.
No, we are talking last 200 years.
Yeah.
The whole research last 200 years, and I'm just using the 200 years as a very safe timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, the reality is like last 60 years, maybe 80 years,
Yeah, these dates, they show that it was not that far ago. So so that's why you're saying that the Ramayana also happened during that time, because that reference is already there. And
Correct. So somebody, so Aditya ji, somebody, so actually I can stop this, So somebody, for example, somebody saying this Gompothere or elephant-like creatures with four tusks existed 9 million years ago. And therefore, if someone says, I wonder, is it possible that Ramayana would have happened then? Nothing wrong with it. As a first guess, that's how we do research, right?
yeah.
He says, I was Ramayana describes four-tusked elephant,
Yeah.
and here I have four-tusked elephants 9 million years ago. So could Ramayana be that time? That's reasonable. But that is just a starting journey, just, starting point. It's like, like you're not going to chant one round of the japa and immediately, become purified and go to Vaikuntha. That doesn't happen. It's the same thing happens in our, science literature too. Tapasya has to be there, So what we find is, when we look for other evidence from Valmiki Ramayana, we know that actually, as we discuss in Saraswati evidence, that it cannot be any time before 50,000 BC or 15,000 BC. But then that creates a problem for Gompothere. Like, were they there, in like Ramayana times, like 14,000 years ago? Now, this evidence tells us that actually they did exist. And the next question then, Aditya ji, is where were they? Of course, they were in Asia. But the reason I showed you how far Ravana has gone for those reasons. So suppose they were not there in Lanka. We don't know that, because we don't know exactly where Lanka is. Right now, we're taking Sri Lanka as a proxy for Lanka. But Ravana could bring them from anywhere, right? He was going around. So that's actually would explain why Ravana had them.
No, actually, I was doing some reading after last session on Lanka. And Hanuman takes Sanjeevani booty, and it falls on the way many places. So the current Sri Lanka looks like the whole place was Ashok Vatika, and Lanka was maybe further down.
That could be possible. Yeah, I think, remember, Aditya, I alluded to that, meaning not as Ashok Vatika. That's very interesting. But it could be under the part of Ravana's domain, right? And once it's a part of Ravana's kingdom, Ravan can decide to keep Sita wherever he chooses, whatever is convenient. Yeah.
So he must have a little bit differentiation on the land mass. But the most surprising thing is, when Hanumanji is carrying Sanjeevani booty, then he goes way south. So all these places, the booties fall down, and there is a different group of vegetations everywhere. So the Meghnad Vad must have happened way south than today's Lanka.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, and just a philosophical research. I did not do more than that.
Conjecture, yeah. It is a conjecture at this point,
Yeah,
right?
conjecture. So, but Go ahead.
I was going to ask Aditya ji, so like on that same subject of Hanuman bringing Sanjeevani
Yeah,
from Himalayas, what are the known places? Now, this could be from a devotional point of view, that's fine, but it could be a good point for investigation.
correct.
Within India, are there places which are kind of right now people think, hey, here is also he dropped some Sanjeevani or anything like that?
Must be there. But the only
Hmm.
one reference I could read was in Lanka,
Okay.
that there is a path.
Hmm.
So that means he did not stop, because there
Ah.
is one, two, three is going on,
Hmm.
and but there is no place where Meghnad was happened. We do not know that,
Ah.
and where the Lakshman was Murchit, we don't
Hmm.
know that place. So if that was a path, and you have
Hmm.
three drops over there, that means the mountain must have been kept somewhere else.
Ah. Yeah.
So that's how I felt to mention it,
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
because I definitely not a proof. I don't do research. It's just a Shastra version. That's it.
Right, right. No, we are. I don't know.
It
I'm glad you
alludes to
said
that.
that. But again, we have to be all very careful, but
Correct.
very, go in the search of a truth, you know,
Correct.
and be willing to correct ourselves
Yes.
in the when the new evidence shows up, which is powerful, objectively testable. We should be willing to change.
Exactly. Exactly. See, the Brahma has authorized it. Brahma has given a vardhan. Now,
Hmm.
if I can take Einstein as truth, which I've never met him, so why not Brahma also?
Correct, correct, correct. And we are always asked to, like Krishna says, right? Pratyaksha avagamyam dharmyam.
Exactly.
You have to
Yes.
experience it. Experience it. At the end of the day, everyone has to experience it. We cannot just leave
Yeah.
it to someone else.
Yeah. Blind belief is stupidity. So
Yeah.
we are into praman and experience actually. So
Hmm.
if you can taste the halwa, why look at the
Hmm.
jar?
Right. Right.
So just taste it.
Yeah. The one that I mentioned, like, in the initially, because I wanted to show Ravana's journey around the world, I mentioned like the genetic trail going to Chile, Peru, the South America. Something I don't may not have a ready reference, but something very interesting. Maybe I'll show you another time. But when we discuss Sugriva's Atlas, definitely I have that reference there. But what is something very interesting is there is a description of a rakshasa. Now, rakshasa is the word used in many different ways. So it is
Correct.
used for a Ravana and his whole thing. Asuras, they can call rakshasas. Danava, we use rakshasas. But in a Shatapat Brahman and some place, and even some Upanishad, where before doing the yajna, the person takes his deer skin, okay, and like cleans it, just like cleaning a your sitting arrangement or something like a pillow. You clean it, and they person will say, okay, let the rakshasas go away, meaning
Mhm.
any dust, any worms, not worms, like small germs that we may not see. So rakshasa is the word used for that purpose also. Okay, the reason I'm saying that is Sugriva describes when, as he goes towards Chile, or at least as he describes, not that he goes, a Rakshasa is called Mandeha.
Mhm.
And their descriptions, if you see, like, it says that Mandehas are such, they go after the animals, they fly and catch animals, and then they hang themselves ulta, like backwards,
Mhm.
and hang from the rock cliffs. Now,
Mhm.
who would that be? Can you take a guess,
Bats.
Aditya ji?
Bats.
Bats, right? Bats, right? So those bats are called Mandeha Rakshasas. Their name is Mandeha. Now the question is, bats are everywhere. So why is Ramayana mentioning them in Chile, in South America? Now here is the reason. See, bats are everywhere, but most of those bats everywhere around the world are frugivorous. They depend on fruits and seeds and whatever different things. But the what is known as vampire bats, the blood sucking bats, anywhere around the world, if you look for blood sucking bats, they are only there in South America. They are there in Chile, Peru, Argentina, Brazil, and so on. So even that description also comes into Valmiki Ramayana, Kishkinda Kand, when Sugriv is describing in all different directions.
Amazing, amazing. I think today's session was very informative for me, because most of the times we consider conjectures as the real history,
Hmm.
and that is the biggest fault. And I think you showed today that sometimes you have to, if you are going by the facts and trying to do research, it's just very interesting also. So, we have to keep our minds busy. So I think Ramayana keeps us very busy.
Correct. And well, and still Pushpak Viman is going to keep us busy.
I think we need to have a session on Pushpak Viman.
Well, I haven't found one, but yeah, we can talk about it. But I don't have an engine to show yet. So,
One thing I found with various researchers by many people,
hmm.
Vanara doesn't mean monkey, and there is the
Hmm.
biggest mythology which has been told to us that a monkey. No, it's just a Hanuman was highly educated person. How can he be Vanara?
Yeah.
I've never seen modern monkey reading Mahabharata, Ramayana, or Veda Shastra.
Correct. In fact, I don't know if we have a time, but I can mention something. Do we have a
Yes,
time? I can
yes,
mention
please, yes,
something on
yes,
Vanara.
yes.
Just that you brought up Vanara. See, I mean, now that you mentioned this point, great point. I would encourage all our viewers, especially those who think of, courageous enough to go to read Valmiki Ramayana in the original with some
Courageous enough.
translation. With some translation, what they will find is this is very interesting. See, with that Vanara. Actually, there is a very good description by on 21 Notes, the YouTube channel, where Yashudip has done a great job.
Mm.
Who are Vanaras? That's the one good worth watching. But I want to bring them to something else. In Valmiki Ramayana, we have every reason to believe that why they were called Vanaras. Even they were called Rukshas. There was a Ruksha like a Jambavan and all
Correct.
that. So he's also human being. Vanaras also human beings. But they were those goes went by those different names. And my point is, what you will notice, and again, everyone should read this. Whereas the monkey tail, so to say, the Vanara tail is shown to the main because that was their, what you can say, the uniform when they are going out on a duty, like a police, the cops uniform kind of thing, and then they wore something. You never find a description of a monkey tail, so to say, come with any lady Vanara like Tara, or Ruma. You never see
Fantastic.
that
Yeah.
description.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
you
right.
never see.
Never see. You mentioned such a point that if they did not have tails, then how did they wear sari? So,
Correct.
sorry, the
Well,
hell.
good point. Yeah, and do you know what Tara refers to Wali
Why?
as a Arya?
Ah, right. That's right.
Eh?
That's right.
See, okay. So we either we have to give up the nonsense of Aryan invasion theory, or we have to accept that Aryas had tails. Okay, which one? Like which one you want to pick, kind of thing. Anyways.
So in the Ramayana, it is mentioned that from the tip of Vindhyachal
Hmm.
to the tip of Himvan, the land in between is called
Hmm.
Aryavrat.
Yes.
So now, which makes it very clear that it's today's Ganga and Yamuna where it flows.
Yeah.
That's the area where it is Aryas, and primarily because of the highly educated class of people,
Hmm. Hmm.
highly virtuous and very commonsensical, which is very absent today. But
Right.
so that's why it is called Aryavrat, and the Arya means just a civilized person, which is
Noble. Yeah.
made true in many references.
Hmm.
When Krishna calls Arjun Anarya, Jushtam, Aswargyam,
Correct.
so which
Correct.
is an abusive term.
Yes. It's like a gali.
गाली दिया किसी को.
Yeah.
Arjun, if any common man would have said it, that man would have been dead
Correct.
immediately.
Correct.
But because Arjun said, Krishna said it,
Krishna
so
says it.
so
Yeah.
therefore it was tolerated also to some extent.
Right.
So thank you, Nilesh
Thank
ji.
you.
It's such a wonderful, and you pick up very good topics. In fact, Nilesh picks up topic in this show right now. But we have to. Yes, go ahead, Nilesh.
No, I was going to say maybe what we should do. See, you have also so much knowledge, but you have taken the role of interviewing people. So you are end up asking question and not necessarily sharing yours. Maybe in future we can do a show where I ask you questions and you share your knowledge with us.
Sure, that will be very good for me because I have to less think that time. Just be ready for the answer.
Okay. Perfect. So we will do that in future. Very good.
Okay. Thank you, viewers, for watching. And people, you have any questions? The video will be published on YouTube. And people who watched it live, we have 800 people right now, and people who are watching it live, please do go to YouTube and do subscribe and hit the bell icon for all the notifications, and keep watching. We'll keep bringing interesting topics related to Shastra, and also how we have to remove this bad narration which has been taught to us. And philosophical research is always welcome, but mental speculation leads to craziness. So just remember that. Thank you all very much for watching. Namaskar.
Namaskar.